The British Foreign Secretary David Cameron has said the UK will provide aid to Gaza worth nearly $40 million. Mr. Cameron is visiting the Middle East and is expected to hold talks with Palestinian leaders later. On Thursday, he met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He also said the importance of the hostage deal was not just that some captives will come home, but also that a pause in the fighting would allow more humanitarian aid into Gaza. In his talks with Palestinian leaders, Lord Cameron is expected to discuss a long-term political solution to the crisis.
Israeli forces have been continuing to carry out raids in the occupied West Bank. These images show forces in the old city of Nablus. 2 young Palestinian men were arrested, and there have been daily raids by Israeli forces ever since the war began.
And for more on the war, let's bring in Arise special correspondent Carl Bostic, who joins us live from Tel Aviv. Carl, it's good to have you with us as always. So can you give us an update with more details about the hostages expected to be released later today?
Good afternoon. That's right. You've already given us broad outlines of what to expect. I'll simply begin by saying that not only are the hostage families going through a roller coaster of emotions, ranging from relief to joy at what they expect to see their loved ones, but the entire country as well going through a roller coaster of emotions that also include fear and apprehension about what's next. You mentioned that 4 o'clock timing of when those 13 women and children will be handed over to the Red Cross. They'll be handed over to the International Red Cross on the Gaza side of the border with Israel, an unspecified location, and then taken to an Israeli military base, from which they'll then be flown to Tel Aviv. Afterwards, they will be dispersed to as many as 6 hospitals. One is a children's hospital outside Tel Aviv, where they'll receive special attention and care and to be diagnosed. Their families will also be on hand to meet them at their hospitals. Meanwhile, at that same time, 2 hours after the release of the or handover of the Israeli or the hostages, the Palestinian prisoners will then be released from the jails in Israel to either the West Bank or to Jerusalem. At the same time, at 4 o'clock, that's when a new list of hostages to be released will be provided by Qatar to Israel. So the process will begin again this afternoon. Will those be telling the families who will be released tomorrow, and this will play out for the next 2 or 3 days until they reach a 50 numbers of hostages being released. It also needs to be said that if Hamas releases 10 hostages each day, another day of ceasefire will be extended up to a limit of 10. One of the problems is that we still don't know how many hostages there are on the ground, living or for that matter, no longer living. And that's why the Red Cross's role is so important, because the Red Cross has not been given permission to even visit those remaining hostages. We're still talking about 190 hostages still remaining in Gaza. And one poignant story, which is what kind of symbolize the plight of hostages, especially children who were taken as hostage, is that of Abigail Ivan. She's only 3 years old, and she was seized from the kibbutz near the border. She saw both of her parents killed, and she was taken into Gaza. President Biden made special mention of her, hoping that she'd be included among the list of those returning 3-year-old Abigail, because today is her 4th birthday. So there's a lot of expectancy there as well about whether she should be amongst that list. And then one final note is this. Many of these hostages returning, we don't know what condition they're in, but we do know for sure is this. They have no idea what this has triggered, the war we've seen for the past 49 days. They have no idea the scale of the war, the scale of destruction, and it's because of those horrific events that took place, including their kidnapping on October 7th.
And you're so right. They've been captured and they've been taken away from the world. There's no way that they would be aware of what's going on. But I want to talk about the delivery of aid trucks that's been going. And what does this mean for the pause in hostilities for Gazans?
Well, it's interesting to note that the very first trucks that crossed the border this morning at 7 o'clock were trucks carrying fuel and gas. That's because there's no fuel in Gaza to move goods around. So once they arrived on the Gaza side of the border, there were trucks waiting to be filled up with diesel to move the aid that was going to be following the rest of the day, now as we speak, into Gaza. In all, 200 trucks bringing food, medicine, water will be coming into Gaza to disperse. But as a UN official, native officials say, for 4 days, that's not going to make much of a difference, to be honest, because, for example, the fuel that's needed for hospitals, it's needed for bakeries, it's needed for water treatment plants. That will be a start. And meanwhile, winter is also coming, and there needs to be winterization. There's been significant damage. 40% of Gaza's housing has been destroyed or damaged. Gaza residents want to return home to see the state of condition, what's left of their home. But the Israelis are telling them, if you go to North Gaza, we discourage you from going because we won't let you. And already there have been one or two incidences where 2 people at least have been killed. Israelis say they've been firing only tear gas and into the air, but nonetheless, 2 are dead. So there's a lot of apprehension amongst the Gazans about, being able to return home, being able to have some semblance of normal life. But as one Gazan put it, 4 days is not enough. It's going to take years now to rebuild our homes, and we're going to need thousands and thousands of tents, especially as winter is approaching.
Very good, Carl. Now, is it likely this ceasefire will be extended now that, like you said, 4 days is not enough? And what are the prospects of Hamas leveraging on this extension, you think?
Well, you actually, you just answered your question, because that's really Hamas's strategy. Theirs is really a strategy of survival. Israel is, wrestling with 2 incompatible goals, destroying, annihilating Hamas, killing its leaders, and yet bringing home all the hostages. Knowing that they hold the hostages is really, that's their leverage. And the longer they can prolong this, it's important for one of 2 reasons. One, that'll give them more time to regroup, because the ones who make the decisions in Hamas, in Gaza, they're underground. They have no idea what's happened above ground, how much has been destroyed. There's been no communications because lack of fuel has impacted communications. So there's that for one. But also, once Israelis see the impact of their loved ones coming home, there will be a growing demand to bring them all home, but also increasingly, even worldwide, public opinion will be really bearing hard on the Israeli government to actually end the war. Some commentators saying that, if this plays out, to say the 10 days, bringing as many hostages home as possible, there will be just growing pressure from European governments, from the Middle East, just to stop the war now. That would play to Hamas's hand in a huge way, even though the U.S. is saying that Israel has a right to do what it needs to prosecute the war, and Israel is saying that we will still continue this war. It will go on even after 10 days. But that's why it's really so uncertain about whether or not we can actually be looking at what could be a climactic moment for the war itself, in which we actually see the war coming to an end.
Well, we will just be watching and waiting. Carl Bostic, thank you so much for joining us live from Tel Aviv.